Welcome to this special Declassified edition of the Bionic Woman files. I'm James Sherrard, and in this segment we'll be taking a closer look at the Bionic Woman's very first episode, Welcome Home, Jaime. But before Jaime Sommers had her own series, she first appeared on The $6 Million Man in the two-part story, The Bionic Woman. Tennis pro Jaime Sommers falls in love with astronaut Steve Austin. Her body is shattered in a tragic skydiving accident, and she is rebuilt with robotic limbs into the world's first Bionic Woman. Steve and Jaime plan to marry, but something goes wrong. Jaime's body rejects her new bionic limbs, and she dies on the operating table with Steve by her side. Now, Jaime's death did more than just traumatize children across the country. The episodes were a ratings hit for ABC TV, and the only thing for them to do was to bring her back. The 1975 season premiere of The $6 Million Man saw the return of the Bionic Woman. Jaime had been secretly brought back to life, but had suffered brain damage and no longer remembered her former life with Steve Austin. Steve tried to help Jaime get back on her feet, but after a botched mission against industrialist Carlton Harris, Steve realized that he was holding Jaime back from building a life of her own. So, with a broken heart, Steve said goodbye to Jaime a second time. Now, this story was intended to wrap up the Bionic Woman storyline, but once again, ABC struck ratings gold. There is no doubt that Jaime Sommers should have a series of her own. Now let's take a quick look at this timeline. In March 1975, Jaime made her first appearance in The Bionic Woman. 6 months later, she was back in September 1975 for The Return of the Bionic Woman. ABC slated the series as a mid-season replacement, and as we know, the series debuted in January 1976. By the time the series was given the green light, producer Harv Bennett and writer-producer Kenneth Johnson had a mere 3 months to develop the series, write the premiere episode, assemble a crew, scout locations, construct sets, start filming, and have the episode ready to air. Oh, and there was one more thing. They needed Lindsay Wagner. Lindsay's contract with Universal Studios had ended in January 1975. She was reluctant to come back to do television, but after much thought and some tough negotiations, Lindsay ended up with a contract for the Bionic Woman that proved to be much more lucrative than her original agreement as a contract player. Dated October 17, 1975, Lindsay's series contract with Universal Studios guaranteed her a minimum of 13 episodes, which could be episodes of The Bionic Woman or The $6 Million Man. However, no more than 4 episodes could be in connection with the $6 Million Man series. Universal also had an option for 5 additional contract years. Now that Lindsay Wagner had signed on, they needed a script, and Kenneth Johnson devised the story that would launch Jaime Sommers into her own series. The first draft of his script for Welcome Home, Jaime is dated November 4th, 1975. It would undergo several revisions right up until the first day of filming on November 24th. As pre-production continued, sets needed to be constructed, and production paperwork shows the sets that were needed for this episode, along with their estimated cost. Note the misspelling of Jaime in the title. Locations utilized in Ojai, California included Lake Casitas, the downtown arcade area, and the Libby Park tennis courts. The Ventura Air Force Base location was actually the Air National Guard base, which was then located at the Van Nuys Airport. Several interior sets that would be utilized throughout the season included the Air Force Base School, the Elgin's living room, and of course Jaime's coach house apartment. These 3 sets were all located on Stage 31 at Universal Studios. The set construction cost breakdown from November 1975 shows where the money went. Jaime's coach house apartment was originally estimated at $17,300, but came in way under budget at $5,747. Now let's dive into the script. There are definitely some interesting scenes that didn't make it into the final cut of this episode. The first one would be scene 45. There has been some discussion amongst fans about how Jaime coldly gave Michael the quick brush off just before boarding the plane to Ojai. But this isn't exactly how writer Kenneth Johnson intended the breakup to happen. Scene 45, where Jaime meets up with Michael after running in the park, was actually expanded and included the breakup. Jaime explains to Michael that she can't commit to anyone until she is really sure of who she is, and naturally Michael says that he understands. It's too bad that this short exchange didn't make it into the episode. In scenes 92 through 96, Jaime is just finishing her apartment cleanup when she hears the sound of a tennis ball being hit. She discovers that it's Teddy, the boy who would soon become one of her students. Teddy was hired by the Elgins to do odd chores around the ranch, but he prefers spending his time batting tennis balls against the barn wall. After giving Teddy a few tennis pointers, Jaime offers to finish his chores so that he can continue practicing. This leads to scenes 97 through 100, where Jaime bionically milks the Elgins' cow, much to the cow's surprise. A similar scene was later incorporated into the Season 2 episode, Beyond the Call. The Day 4 call sheet lists Teddy and the cow as being required on set, so it's possible that these scenes were actually shot. This brings us to scene 101. Jim brings the mail into the Elgins' living room and hands Jaime a rejection letter from the Ohio Public School District. The only remnant of this short scene is the letter that we still see Jaime holding in the shot. Finally, we have the last scene of Part 1. Scene 211E puts a slightly creepier spin on the character of Carlton Harris. The actual episode ends with a freeze frame of Carlton in his car en route to Ojai, but the script has him sitting in his car along the road as he looks toward Jaime's new home. Now this ending certainly would have made Oscar's warning to Jaime all the more ominous. Welcome Home Jaime was a true spin-off of The $6 Million Man, with Part 1 actually being produced by the $6 Million Man production team and given the $6 Million Man production number 43034. It was originally scheduled to air as an episode of The $6 Million Man on January 11, 1976. ABC issued press releases, ads were printed, and reviews were published. But for reasons still unknown, ABC announced on January 7th that the episode's air date was changed to Wednesday, January 14th, where it aired as the premiere of the Bionic Woman series. Years later, this paper trail of ads and reviews has created much confusion over the actual air date. Due to the switch from the $6 Million Man series to the Bionic Woman, Welcome Home Jaime Part 1 would have undergone some changes to the main title, the end credits, and the episode credit fonts. It was also assigned a new production number, 44415. In what appears to be the last remaining artifact of the original $6 Million Man edit of this episode, we see the freeze frame to be continued in the font used for the $6 Million Man credits. This brings us to Part 2, where Jaime is forced to either run from the life she's building in Ojai or stand her ground and deal with Carlton Harris. After a brief scene in Jaime's classroom, this episode starts off with one of the most memorable stunts of the entire series. As Carlton Harris continues to secretly test Jaime's bionic abilities, he arranges for the brakes on her car to fail as she's driving home from school. Her Datsun 280Z careens wildly down the hill, and Jaime is forced to use her bionic leg to bring the car to a stop. This stunt sequence was performed by Lindsay Wagner and her stunt double Kevin Johnston. Production paperwork shows that the stunt was performed on December 8, 1975, on the tour road of the Universal Studios backlot. And one of the items required for this shoot was a dummy leg. Kevin Johnston also performed other stunts in this episode, including a running shot, a forward jump, and multiple back jumps. She would continue as Lindsay Wagner's stunt double for 3 more episodes, at which point Rita Eggleston became Lindsay's primary stunt double. In Part 2 of this story, Jaime infiltrates Carlton Harris's inner circle and agrees to steal top-secret materials for him. Several lines of dialogue throughout the script were trimmed from the final edit of this episode. In scene 48 on Carlton's terrace, the dialogue where Jaime pushes Carlton to talk about money has been cut. This segment also explained that Jaime had spent the night at the Harris estate under armed guard. Scene 88 shows Jaime and Donald arriving at Perry Scientific to acquire the next item. Their van is stopped at the security gate where a guard checks Donald's forged ID and then lets them pass. Donald remarks to Jaime that his father also owns a very good engraving plant. Scene 106, where Donald is holding a gun on Jaime in the van, originally contained a line where Jaime commented on how corruption can get out of control. After Jaime breaks into Electrodyne Incorporated, there are 2 short scenes that were cut. Scenes 129 and 130 have Jaime checking the phone line, only to discover that it's being monitored, so she leaves another note to send the OSI to the Harris estate. Scene 137 shows Jaime wrapping things up with Oscar before she heads off to school. Jamie's final line, where she tells Oscar to do her a favor and hit her up on the weekends, was trimmed from the episode. This episode was shot from December 4th through the 11th, 1975. The first scenes filmed were scenes 47 through 50, featuring Jamie, Carlton, and Donald on Carlton's terrace. The exterior and interior sets of the Harris estate were all shot on location at a private home located in Malibu, California. The alley behind the Bank of Ojai, where Jamie is forced to jump up onto the fire escape, is actually located in Los Angeles on Wilcox Avenue, just off of Sunset Boulevard. The property used for Electrodyne Incorporated was the former Bunker Ramo Corporation, located on La Tienda Road in Westlake Village, California. The property has since become the Oaks Christian School. The interior sets of Perry Scientific, Carlton's office, and the vault room at Electrodyne were all filmed at General Service Studio in Hollywood. There was a long line of merchandise produced during the run of the Bionic Woman series, and several items tie into Welcome Home Jamie. Novelizations of the story were released in the US and abroad. Bubblegum cards featured several scenes, and a lunchbox included scenes taken directly from the episodes. Kenner Toys produced an action figure dressed in a jogging suit inspired by this episode, and they produced Jamie's sports car that allowed the action figure to stop the car with her feet when the brakes failed. The Kenner movie viewer and cassette even utilized actual footage from the show that kids could watch over and over again. Beyond the televised broadcast of Welcome Home Jamie, the story was also released to the home video market. The 1978 DiscoVision Laserdisc was mistakenly labeled as Welcome Home Jamie, but was actually the $6 Million Man two-part story, The Bionic Woman. VHS tapes and DVDs that included Welcome Home Jamie were released in foreign markets before the episodes finally had their official release in the US by Universal Studios Home Entertainment. Now let's check out some top secret trivia. One thing we learned from an early draft of this script is that Jamie's student Teddy actually had a last name. Writer Kenneth Johnson gave him the last name of Burns, as a nod to comedian George Burns. Throughout the run of the Bionic Woman series, atmosphere players and stand-ins were used to fill in scenes and take the place of principal actors. In Welcome Home Jamie Part 2, we get our first look at 3 of these regular performers. Inga Lindgren was Lindsay Wagner's stand-in and photo double, and appeared in numerous episodes. Sally Yarnell was an ongoing background player who also appeared as Dr. Rudy Wells' lab assistant. Pete Dunne had a recurring role as an OSI agent, and he also served as Richard Anderson's stand-in and stunt double. If we look closely at the guest book from the cocktail party, we see that it was signed by series hairstylist Virginia Hadfield. You may have noticed that the same China pattern appears throughout the run of the Bionic Woman series. This is the Dominica pattern from Noritake's New Image line, which was produced from 1969 through 1977. But this China pattern isn't unique to the Bionic Woman. It previously appeared in another Harve Bennett series, The Invisible Man, starring David McCullum. Besides the $6 Million Man, the Bionic Woman had a deep connection to The Invisible Man, which included using some of the same locations and cast. And when The Invisible Man was canceled, many members of the production crew joined the Bionic Woman series, including writer James Perriott and director Alan Levy. We can't wrap up this look at Welcome Home Jamie without thanking creator Kenneth Johnson for providing Jamie Summers with a great start to her new life as the Bionic Woman. And thanks to you for opening this special Declassified edition of the Bionic Woman Files. This is James Sherrard. For more information on the Bionic Woman series, visit BionicWomanFiles.com.